Hi, I'm Michael Killen. Welcome. And my guest today is the former Undersecretary of the Department of Energy for the United States government, and it's the Department of Science and Energy, and his name is Lynn Orr. And with that, Lynn, how are you today?
I'm just fine, thank you.
So it's former Undersecretary, Science and Engineering, the United States Department of Energy.
Yeah, close. Former Undersecretary, Science and Energy for the Department of Energy. So.
Good. And you got kicked out of there?
Well, it's normal when administrations change for the top leadership of the agencies to change. And so at noon on January 20th, I had the opportunity to go work on something else.
So you were in the Obama administration.
Yes.
How did you feel when it was time for you to leave Washington, D.C. and come back to the great state of California and Stanford University?
Well, there's nothing like a couple of years in Washington to convince you that this is about the best place on the planet to live and work. I was certainly happy to come back. I came away with a deep respect for a lot of talented people that worked at DOE headquarters and also at the national labs around the country to support the science and energy research enterprise for the nation. So, and I have to admit, I miss some of those folks. A lot of good people to work with. Good.
And what was the most interesting or important work you did? Was it 4 years?
No, I was, it took just over a year for me to get through Senate confirmation. So it was supposed to be a 3-year assignment, but it turned out to be only 2 and just a little bit. In terms of what my overall big assignment was to figure out productive ways to link the applied energy programs with the fundamental science programs. But of course there were many, many pieces of that as we worked on the budget and as we tried to build a portfolio of research that made sense for the nation. Just a few of those, for example, we did a quadrennial technology review. So we really looked at every technology option out there for finding ways to reduce greenhouse gas emissions and to make our energy systems much more efficient and more productive and to lower the cost of them as well. We worked on multiple portfolio plans. I chaired a study of Aliso Canyon and what went wrong there and what could be done to prevent that sort of thing in the future. So lots and lots of interesting things across the whole range of what the department does.
Would I be correct to say, from your previous experience, you have gained a lot of knowledge, accomplishments, but it would be at roughly this level? But when you were back in Washington, did you start to see the world at a much higher level?
Well, what I think I had worked at Stanford previously on our big interdisciplinary energy research initiative. That was the same job that the Secretary of Energy had at MIT, so the two of us knew each other. So I was pretty familiar with the range of energy technologies and the problems we need to face in thinking about how to make those cleaner. What was more of a stretch for me was the Office of Science programs. Some of them I knew well from having served on their advisory committees, but there was a lot to learn about there, and it was fun. I know a lot more about neutrinos now than I did when I went to Washington, I'll tell you that.
Okay, and let's see, you went to school in Texas, and am I correct, material science?
No, I went to high school in Texas, but I studied chemical engineering at Stanford as an undergraduate.
Okay, so that's pretty fundamental stuff, basically. I mean, we all build upon that. Okay, so now you're back at Stanford.
Right.
And what are you doing? You're a professor emeritus?
I am a professor emeritus. That means that when I get up in the morning, I get to decide what I work on for the day. They were kind enough to give me an office again, and I'll teach a couple of classes, and I'm continuing to work with lots of colleagues working on the full range of energy research at Stanford. There's a lot going on. at our place, and a lot of really talented people, and I'm happy to help out here and there when I can.
The two courses you're going to teach, briefly, what are they?
The one will be a graduate course that's about the mathematics of how fluids flow in the rocks in the Earth's crust. And the other one will be an undergraduate sophomore seminar, probably, something along the lines of one I did before I left, which was called Technology in the Greenhouse. And it's really about all the ways that, that we have to try to reduce greenhouse gas emissions associated with energy use.
So that's like technology in the world.
Yes, of course, yes.
And you said you're working with a whole group of colleagues right now in various ways, and they're interested. One or two projects that they're working on that you find especially interesting?
Well, you know, in the sort of the years before I went to Washington, we had established the Precourt Institute for Energy. And it was designed to bring together about 200 faculty members distributed around the university, working on really every aspect of from the fundamental material science to the energy policy to energy efficiency. I'm continuing to work on topics that have to do with carbon capture and storage. I'm working with a former student on a project out in the San Juan Basin looking at how to reduce fugitive methane emissions. Sure. And then, of course, there are the endless proposal reviews and presentations for visitors and that kind of thing as well.
Okay, so I heard two topics, the future, TIV, emissions that escape out of the wells, out of the production, out of transport, that would be it?
Yeah, actually the system that we're looking at now is that it's associated with an underground, uncontrolled fire in a coal bed. And we went to work to try to figure out how these things work. Turns out they're all around the world. There are lots and lots of them. But in doing so, we discovered that the way the fire is sustained, at least part of it is from methane that's flowing up through the coal. And that made us go look at the outcrops where the coal is exposed to the surface. And there we discovered that in some places there's a fair amount of methane that's being released. And so we're working now to quantify that, because what we'd like to do is to find ways to control that.
So like in Pennsylvania and some other coal states, they still have these fires.
Yeah, there's one
decades,
in,
I think.
Yeah, Centralia, Pennsylvania, that's been burning for, I don't know, it must be close to 60 years now. There are 33 active fires in Colorado and a whole bunch in Indonesia and India and China. So it's an issue around the world.
Are you trying to find a solution to put the fires out?
Yeah, we actually worked on a scheme that we were able to show that you could use the fire to draw an inert gas into the combustion zone. And if you could do that for long enough, you could put it out. We didn't have enough money to do that on our project.
Okay, it's very interesting. Before I get to a main aspect that interests me a lot, on the sequestration of the carbon dioxide and the methane or whatever, what aspect of that area are you working on or interested in?
You know, I started my career as an engineer working on using high pressure CO2 for enhanced oil recovery. Okay. It turns out that if the reservoir is deep enough and the pressure is high enough, CO2 can displace oil much more efficiently than water can, for example. And we really figured out the physics of how that works and the chemistry of the flows, and figured out how to model that in considerable detail. And then as time passed, it became clear that we needed to limit the amount of CO2 escaping to the atmosphere from burning fossil fuels or other activities. And then we began to think about the question of if we captured that CO2, where could we put it that it would stay there, and what kinds of conditions would be needed, and how would you design that sort of thing. So it kind of evolved into the geologic storage of CO2.
Okay, and then I heard a little while ago the water and the rocks, and that's probably related to that. And the source of the carbon dioxide is from smokestacks?
Could be. You know, every day large quantities of CO2 are separated from natural gas or are separated when fertilizer is made. So it could be one of those sources. It also could come from combustion product gases, whether you're burning coal or even methane in a natural gas power plant.
Very interesting, and I know you like these kind of projects.
I do, actually.
And I'd say they are also interesting.
Well, I think so too. I'm glad you shared that.
Okay, but I remember, although your face does light up very easily, which is good, when we chatted about the need to transition to a clean energy economy,
Right.
I think you told me that is an area that you've given a considerable amount of thought to.
Yes, it certainly was a key part of my job in Washington, and really it was a driver of my last 20 years at Stanford as well. We would benefit in many, many ways if we transitioned to an energy system that was much cleaner than what we had then, and even cleaner than we have now. And there are lots of ways to do this. We can do it with renewables. They've come down dramatically in cost, solar and wind. We can do it with replacing coal-fired power plants, particularly the old, least efficient ones, with natural gas combined cycle plants. We can do it with judicious use of biofuels. We can do it by lots of application of energy efficiency. And we can do it with a whole host of R&D activities that will provide us with some new options going forward.
That we don't know about yet.
Well,
That
we have plenty of ideas, and some of them will work. We just don't necessarily know which ones will be the ones that really pay off in the future.
I have a problem of thinking about the transition from a fossil-based energy economy to the clean one.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have a marker at this point in time? Do you look to determine where we are? Do you look at the concentration of greenhouse gases?
Certainly, we watch that all the time. This last year, that's now over 400 parts per million. So that's a sobering one.
So that's a marker right now. And you're looking into the future. Are you looking at a lower concentration?
Well, in the end, of course, we would like to get to lower concentrations, but we gotta stop the rise and go over the peak before that will happen.
So the marker really right now for you is the amount of greenhouse gases that are being emitted now, and I think you folks know how much is going up each year. Are you, for your forecasting out somewhere, the clean economy, do you have a amount of carbon emissions that are going up in the air sometime in the future? Would that?
Well, you know, the thing that makes this hard is that that it depends so much on the choices we make and what we do. But in rough terms, by mid-century, we need to have something like 80% reductions in the greenhouse gas emissions. And then we need to continue to drive it down from there. And even that still leaves a significant probability of increased temperature. So that's a big challenge. These are very big systems, and there's a lot to be done. But we have made some good progress recently.
Okay, mid-century is not that far away.
That's for sure.
Maybe a problem for us.
Yeah, neither one of us will be there, but it's
Okay.
it's good to worry about it.
But we're not at the clean economy yet by 2050?
Well, I think that depends on your definition of a clean energy economy. One that had 80% less emissions now would be much cleaner. And you know, we can already see the impact in the United States of we have reduced our greenhouse gas emissions over the last 7 or 8 years, and I mean, we still have lots to do. I don't mean to minimize that challenge, but we've come over the peak. Europe is is making progress as well. And China and India have made significant commitments under the Paris Agreement, which they've said they will stick with even if the United States does in the end withdraw.
I listened to you carefully, but I want to be sure at one point. So you know how much emissions are going up right now, and if you can reduce that by 80%?
Yeah, we're actually talking about 80% versus 1990 emissions. So they've gone up since then. So it's a bigger amount.
How many decades will it take to get into the clean economy?
Well, then you'll have to define for me what you mean by the clean energy economy.
But
we're doing it now.
No, I'd like you to define how much emissions need to drop from, let's say, now to sometime in the future.
Yeah, well, we need to make quite substantial reductions from where we are now. The reason it's hard to answer your question is that so much depends on the choices we make. Some of it is individual choices. How many of us will choose to buy and operate an electric vehicle? Will we work hard enough to make the electric power system as clean as we can?
Yes.
We can see a pathway to do that. Will we use the regulatory authorities in a way that makes that possible? Will we set a price on carbon? All of those things will determine how fast it will be. And we also need some technology development as well. So there's a lot to do, and there's so many moving parts that making a specific prediction of which year it will be is, in my view, not possible.
Okay, but now that makes me think of California's climate plan, which I think Jerry Brown has said it's the most ambitious plan in North America, maybe the world. And it's a big plan.
It is, yeah. Well, we're a big economy. California, depending on whose numbers you believe, it's something like the 6th biggest economy in the world. And we've shown its power by imposing our energy efficiency standards, which have then been adopted by the rest of the country and indeed the rest of the world in many places, because companies want to serve those big markets. We have made quite impressive inroads in installing solar and wind power, and the costs of those commodities have come down dramatically over the last 7 or 8 years. We use quite a bit of hydro. In July this year, about half of the electricity was generated with natural gas, a little less than half, and the other half came from wind and solar and hydro and nuclear. So about half of our electricity came from very low greenhouse gas emission resources at that point. So you would say, well, that's progress.
Yes.
We have more to do, but it's definitely progress.
Yeah. I looked at a description of California's climate change plan, and I very quickly noticed that it's an identification of targets in terms of industry sectors like agriculture, waste management, transportation, and a couple of others. So it does identify the 800 largest emitter, that's another in the state. So they have targets in terms of industries, but then they also have solutions. And you mentioned one, well, you mentioned several, cap and trade. Energy and energy efficiency, and maybe a third one that escapes my mind right now. But that seems to me to sort of be the key elements of this California strategy: identification of certain major energy sectors, and then several different types of solutions. So,
yeah, I haven't found anything to disagree with yet.
And I say to myself, that's it. That's the key. That's the guts of the beast.
Yeah, no? I would say it maybe in a slightly different way, and that is that this is a place where it really is about a portfolio of solutions. So on the transportation side, for example, first and foremost, there's the efficiency of the vehicles that we drive that still use gasoline and diesel. And California has the authority, at least for the moment, to set its own vehicle mileage standards. It's about electrifying a reasonable fraction of transportation for urban transportation. Electric vehicles, now all of a sudden there are many manufacturers that have at least a plug-in hybrid version and a smaller number a pure electric vehicle. So that means no emissions on the vehicle, but it imposes a really big responsibility with regard to the way we make the electricity that goes in them. If you make that at a coal-fired power plant, that's at least no better than a gasoline vehicle. So clean electricity, electrifying transportation, looking at clean fuels or low carbon fuels, using more biofuels in that as another component of that. And then there's the industry side. We have lots of industry in this state, and each different, a refinery is different from a cement factory, is different from a manufacturing operation of another sort. So each of those needs to be looked at in its own way. And the cap and trade system, what that does is to provide a financial incentive for companies to go after reducing their own emissions so that they can sell or if they need to, buy the ability to emit. So it's just a market mechanism for setting a price on the emissions.
So you pretty much have gone over a fair number of the solutions and things associated with the plan. And this is a hard question. This is a question, and I'm not sure it's even a good question. What's the most important aspect of California's climate plan?
Mm-hmm. So I would say that it's the breadth of the portfolio. That there's no single simple solution to the climate and greenhouse gas issue, and that's not the only reason for doing this. It's in terms of health effects and emissions of other pollutants. There are a lot of good reasons to do this, and not the least of them is economic competitiveness. A clean energy system will generate lots of jobs, and it will make us economically competitive in a way that we should lead the world. I mean, we can do that.
Okay. I had another thought, another question. If I'm the head or high-level official in another country, and if I looked at California's climate plan, what would be the most important aspect that I should grab onto and try to get my country or my state? As you know, maybe a third, I don't know, of the states don't have a climate action plan. Maybe not that high as a third, but what's the most important thing, do you think, for, let's say, Alabama, Tennessee?
Well, I would say that the situations are different in each of the states. They'll have their current mix of energy resources that they use and a set of ways that they can address those. The key elements of the plan are creating a market mechanism and then adapting components within that for each of the sectors that make sense in a particular setting. So I think the overall structure and some of the tools that are being used are transportable, but they'll need to be put together in a different mix.
So creating a market structure,
Mm-hmm.
that is very important. And
It
then
is.
once you have the market structure, then you can talk to the suppliers in the area and even the users, because I think markets are a function of customers and whatever.
That's right.
That's very interesting. And we have about 2 minutes left. You talked a lot. No,
well, that's what I'm not getting paid for, right?
Yeah. Oh, you've been wonderful. Can we just end maybe with the benefits that the great state of California is getting from having an effective climate change plan? And we'll start with health.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Jobs.
Jobs.
Growth of the economy.
Mm-hmm.
less dependent on foreign suppliers for fuel. And you got some more?
Well, sure. I mean, if you think about the world is going to invest something like $60 trillion in energy infrastructure between now and 2040, and a whole bunch of that is going to be for clean energy. Those are markets that we should compete in and serve and lead the way. And it also gives us a chance to work in our universities and national labs on all kinds of exciting research for the future.
Okay, that's interesting. Now, in September of 2018, California is going to have its big climate global action plan, and we have about a minute. What do you think is going to happen there?
Well, I think Jerry Brown is going to have a starring role, and deservedly so. That he's done a good job, and the legislature and a lot of people have all contributed to that. And I think they will show that the United States, even if the federal government withdraws from the Paris Agreement, we've got a pretty good shot at delivering better than what President Obama promised in places like California. So I think that demonstration is as important as anything that could be done.
Okay, so I want to start thanking you for being here. I feel it's an honor. I've learned a lot, and I just want to share in part for the audience, because I think you know this. Part of our deal here is for you to help educate me, because I am painting climate change, the state's California climate plan. And it's a bit of a task even figuring out how to cut this. I want to thank you, Lynn. Ladies and gentlemen, my guest is Lynn Orr. He is the former Undersecretary of Science and Energy for the United States Department of Energy. Now he's at Stanford. He has about 20 other accomplishments, but we're not going to go over them. Again, I'm Michael Killen.